Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mack.
Happy New Year to you. We're currently in a state of a lockdown. Just went into lockdown yesterday, although I live in Tier 4 in the London area of Great Britain anyway. So because of that, we've had a very quiet Christmas. We weren't allowed to leave home unless it was for a particular reason. And we weren't allowed to have people over. So it was a very quiet Christmas for us. But we're now in proper lockdown. But carrying on with the writing, carrying on with the podcasting, and I hope you are too. Today I'm going to talk about three things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is how to supercharge your writing and how to see the bigger picture as an author. And this is something that I want you to do as part of your New Year's resolutions. I also want to talk a little bit about writing with confidence and how to deal with criticism. And I'm going to finish by talking about Amazons and asking whether they actually really existed. But first, how to see the bigger picture as an author. I want to give you 6 exercises which I think will help you supercharge your writing. Now, I want to start this by saying that you already know better. You already know better, but can you do better? That's the question for New Year. And the clean slate of January does provide an author with the space. They can put their knowledge into practice. But how will you put your knowledge into practice? Well, I suggest that you join the dots. And a dot connection puzzle, do you remember them from when you were young? A join the dots puzzle is a group of numbered dots on a page that becomes an object once all the lines are drawn between the empty spaces. And a join the dotist, who's a puddle solver like yourself, will reveal a complex image and get a sense of satisfaction once they have joined all the dots, because the accurate image is revealed. And they'll know that that image is revealed through their own effort. And in speech, we use the phrase connecting the dots as a metaphor to illustrate the ability to associate a smaller idea with a larger idea so we see the bigger picture. And I tell you now that this is the time, at the beginning of the year, to connect the dots and to see the bigger picture in your own writing. So I wanted to offer you 6 exercises that you can practice that will help you connect the dots. However, please keep in mind that these exercises will not necessarily improve the quality of what you write or even improve your language skills or your basic penmanship, but they will enhance your novelistic skills. And they'll help there because they'll join up the dots in your mental approach to writing. So in other words, these exercises will allow you to see the bigger picture in your own work. These exercises will help you to write what you really feel, and that's important because that's the stuff that will ultimately supercharge your writing, because a talented writer is an emotional writer. Now, if the idea of doing writing exercises sounds a little bit irksome, remember that being an accomplished artist takes practice, and any concert pianist will tell you that they practice scales every day. And also, think of writing as a physical undertaking. And it is physical, believe me. It's a workout for your imagination. And a marathon runner wouldn't expect to run a marathon without doing some warm-up exercises, would he or she? And when has there ever been a better time to be strict with yourself and do some exercises than in the new year? So think of these exercises as part of your disciplined approach to your writing, and I'd like you to try them all. So the first one, highlight emotions. Now for this I want you to review a chapter, and it could be any chapter, but a chapter that you wrote in November. I want you to grab a coloured pencil or a highlighter, or use some other way of emphasising words. And I recommend that you print a chapter for this exercise, although it's not essential. If you want to save trees, you don't have to. But I'd like you to highlight every word in that chapter that you think carries emotional weight, or it has some kind of emotional baggage. Now, I'm not going to tell you what emotional means to you because it's your own private thing. But I will give a little hint, and that is that the words that you probably will underline will most likely be visual or auditory or kinesthetic. Once you've done that, I would like you to try to group those words into columns, and the columns should be marked aggressive, passive, or, if you want, positive and negative, and then the third column, uncertain. And I'd like you to see how many words are in the aggressive and how many words are in the passive, or how many words are in the positive and how many words are in the negative, and obviously how many words are in the uncertain, the third category. And ask yourself why there are more in one column than another. Is that right? Just ask yourself that. And that's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2 is to write out a recent dream. Now for this I want you to try to connect with the feelings that you experienced in a recent dream, and then see how those feelings translate themselves onto paper. So for this exercise, I don't want you to worry about form. You don't have to worry about punctuation or grammar. Just do it. Just allow your feelings to flow from your unconscious mind and into the blank space and see what happens. The next exercise I want you to do is to believe in what you write. And in order to do this, you need to create a pyramid of beliefs. So exercise number 3 is create yourself a pyramid of beliefs. This exercise will help you to understand your core beliefs so that you can test your writing for truth and for passion. And don't worry about doing this exercise because it's not narcissistic to know your own self. It just makes perfect sense if you're an artist. So put down a list of words that mean something to you, and perhaps they might be something like love or family or music or friendship or animals or freedom or spirituality or literature or, I don't know, video games, whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you. Find your own. And if you don't know where to look, by the way, look inside your heart, because the things that mean most to you are inside your heart. That's where you last left them. Anyway, once you've completed this list, I would like you to draw a pyramid on a piece of paper. It might have to be quite large. And then I want you to put your beliefs from your list into the pyramid. But I want you to sort them in a particular way. I want you to put the beliefs that you think are most important to you at the bottom, because these are your foundation stones for all your base beliefs. Then I want you to pile the other beliefs on top, and the ones which you think are the most confusing or even the most nebulous, the ones that you can't really get a grip on, I want you to put the pointy bit right at the top of the pyramid. And then once you've created your pyramid of beliefs, I want you to put that pyramid on your mood board, because you're going to refer to that from time to time to test your own writing for truth and for passion. And the next exercise is I want you to write a letter to your imaginary character. When did you last write a letter, by the way? Because hopefully you write letters all the time, and I would like you obviously to write letters a few times a year anyway, even if it's just thank you letters to relatives and friends. But now is the time to write a letter to your most recently made up character, your protagonist. And you can also try to write a letter to your antagonist if you really want a challenge. But in this exercise, I want you to try to tell your fictional character about your New Year plans. I would like you to let them know that you still appreciate their friendship. And I want you to be able to explain to them how you feel and ask them for advice and perhaps provide advice to them. Now, if you think all this is a totally worthless exercise and a complete waste of time, then why not polish up and edit your letter once it's been done and then post it onto your social media? Because it's a great way to promote your new book, and it will keep your readers curious, if not a little bit fascinated, by your creative processes. The next exercise is I want you to be true to yourself, to thine own self be true. Just jot down 6 things that you know are true about yourself. They can be good, they can be bad, or they can be completely unremarkable. It doesn't matter. The key thing is that they must be true, and you must find 6, and you must write them down. The reason you write them down is because you want to make a commitment. You're making a commitment to these 6 things. Once you've done that, put them in a list form, a bulleted list if you like that kind of thing, and then reflect on them for a while, because there's the next part of this exercise, and it's the fun part. I want you to now write down 6 things that are completely false, completely untrue about yourself. And again, these can be good, and they can be bad, or they can be totally nondescript. It doesn't matter. But once you've done that, put them in a list form as well, and now pick 2 from your first list, 2 from your truth list, and then 2 from your second list, 2 from your false list. Scramble them up a bit, and then put them in a social media post. And ask your readers in your post which one, yes, one, of the facts is true, and which one, yes, one, of the facts is untrue. So you would have 4 facts, and you're asking them to choose one which is true and one which is untrue. So you can then see what results come back, and it might surprise you to find out what others think. And if you want, you can later admit that there were actually 2 false answers and 2 true answers, and I'll leave that to your sense of moral scruples. But the key thing to this is that it will make you understand what you do believe in, because they're the truths, and what you don't believe in, because they're the lies. Finally, the last exercise is I would like you to read out the first paragraph of your most recent manuscript. Now, you can skip this exercise if you already read your work aloud. So, for example, you might be a regular podcaster like me, or you might host a video show or a radio show, or you might already perform poetry, or you might already perform your plays. If you do any of those things, and you do them regularly, then you can skip this exercise. But if you don't read out your own work, then you must start now. So go on, read that first paragraph out loud, and you can yell it if you want, or you can whisper it if you want, or you can put on a silly voice if you want. But however you do it, read it out aloud. And yes, you will look stupid in the mirror. Don't worry about it. Nobody's judging you. Well, the only person who is judging you is you. Now, what do you learn from reading your paragraph out loud? Well, if you're anything like me, you will probably start to edit and redraft the paragraph right away. You'll probably start editing it as you're reading it. Why? Well, it's because the muscles in your mouth see, and I'm putting inverted commas around that, they see the sound of words and even the meaning of words in a different way to how your mind sees and reads them. And that's kind of curious, huh? So you'll find that some of your words are not as strong as you thought they would be. And some spaces might be in the wrong place. And some sentences are kind of twisted around all the wrong way. And some ideas, well, they don't even work at all. And why is that? Well, it's because reading aloud helps with the cadence of the work. Reading aloud helps with the rhythm of the sentences. And reading aloud helps you to define ideas. In other words, reading aloud brings comprehension. So there you are. There's 6 exercises to help supercharge your writing. And I think it's a great way to start the new year. Good luck with them, and let me know how you get on. And tweet me at Neilmach, Neilmach, if you have any comments or advice or any ideas. Thank you very much. The confidence crisis. This is all about self-esteem and self-confidence and writing with confidence. Because dealing with criticism, and you can sweeten it by calling it feedback or comments or impressions and all that sort of stuff if you want. But it all amounts to the same thing. It's disapproval. And disapproval is never an easy thing to swallow. And it's not easy because it can poison your soul and it can destroy what you love the most, which is your creativity. Now, the reason that criticism hurts so much is that an artist puts identity into their representations and their interpretations. So that 2-star review or the disposable hurtful comment on a social network is an attack on your unique character. And it feels personal because it is personal. It's as rude as saying you have an enormous nose, except it's worse. It's actually worse than that because the artist has put themselves into their artistic creation. They've laboured and they've laid themselves bare. They've laid themselves vulnerable just to guide or help or entertain their weasel-mouthed critics. And they knew from the start that by revealing their sensibilities and their conceptions, they'd face criticism. They knew that from the start. And that's because that's the transactional nature of art. But when criticism arrives, as surely it must, it will be a demoralising experience and it could lead to a period of self-examination, self-discipline and even self-persecution. So where does this take an artist? It takes an artist into a place of mean-spiritedness for his neighbour, and worse still, it takes an artist into a period of self-inflicted demotivation. How does a writer then deal with a confidence crisis? Well, we could take a lesson from Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who said, "I pay no attention whatever to anybody's praise or blame. I simply follow my own feelings." And that's a good place to start. But there are some other tips that I think go a little bit deeper and I think will help you to deal with the confidence crisis. Now, self-confidence doesn't come free. It doesn't come free with oxygen. It has to be earned. And as an artist, you must refill the confidence cup every day of your life. And how do you do that? Well, you do it when you perform better in your own eyes. And when you do, you'll know it. And how? Because you'll feel it inside your heart. You will know when you've done well because you'll feel it. How can I be so sure of this? Because we all do the same thing. It's a natural human sensation. We know whether we've done a good job or we know when we've done a poor job. We know it. We know it in our hearts. But beware. A little seed of doubt can be laid inside your brain by a thing that I call the hesitation goblin. So fantasy fiction fans out there will quite like the idea of a goblin. This nasty little hesitation goblin hides a seed in the back of your mind where you don't notice it at first, and there the seed grows into something that's quite difficult to cut down and to prune. And before you know it, you have a fully developed confidence crisis blooming inside your own brain. And what happens then? Well, I'll tell you what happens then. Some mouthy gadfly comes along and he drops or she drops a flipping great wad of slurry all over your precious creation. And what does that mean? Well, what it means is they've fertilised your seed of doubt, the same seed of doubt that you had already had growing inside your own mind, planted there by the hesitation goblin. So the best news is that you can forget all of your critics, you can forget even the most prominent critics, and all the naysayers and all the carpers, all the 2-star reviewers, because it's not their fault. All they did, the nasty, vapid drosswits that they are, was to revegetate your own secret misgivings that were placed there by the hesitation goblin. So the first thing you need to do is to remove the critics from this feedback loop. So turn your back on them, turn your back on their words. The next thing to do is to take back control of your honesty in writing, because that way you'll ward off the hesitation goblin and he can't plant his seed in the first place. But how do you do that? Well, here's how to do it. Are you ready? Write about what excites you. Write from your heart. Write what you feel. Write about what is activating you right now. Find the trigger and then you'll be able to release the energy. Write when your heart is full of ideas. Write without self-judgment to discover your own solutions. Avoid fixing and proofreading as you go along. Wait a few days before you do any proofreading for grammar, punctuation or formatting. because this will allow you to enjoy the free spirit of writing. Try to find, again, that free spirit of writing. And be impish, be feisty, be impetuous if you want to write with gusto. And be brave enough to dig deep. And if you think you've already gone deep enough, go deeper. Like I said, write from your heart. And finally, my last tip is write every day, write big, write small, write long, write short. It doesn't matter what you write. It's only important that you write passionately. Any thoughts on that? Please tweet me at Neilmach, Neilmach, all one word. And good luck with your confident writing. And that's how to deal with criticism, and that's how to deal with a impending confidence crisis. If you're a fan of Wonder Woman and the whole mythology about Wonder Women, or you're a fan of Greek mythology, or you're a fan of good stories, then you'll know about the Amazons. They are a tribe of warrior women who were believed to reside in Anatolia, which is in present-day Turkey. Now, according to Apollonius, who was among the foremost Homeric scholars, whose works were found in the Great Library of Alexandria in Egypt, which was established around 250 BC. And Apollonius, by the way, wrote the famous Jason and the Argonauts story, where Amazons are mentioned. He says that the Amazons were the daughters of Ares, and because of that pedigree, they were brutal and aggressive, and their main concern was war. As you might already know from the Wonder Woman franchise, Ares is the Greek god of courage and war, and he is one of 12 Olympians and the son of Zeus. The ancient Greeks were, understandably, suspicious and quite guardful of Ares, who, with his sons Phobos, which means fear, Deimos, which means terror, and his lover-stroke-sister Enyo, which means discord, Ares sowed the seeds of conflict and antagonism across the globe. But the Amazons also descended from Harmonia, and Harmonia is a Naiad, or a nymph, who has continued to exist across all the centuries as a water spirit, in a water spirit form. So, for example, the Lady of the Lake. This water nymph, Harmonia, is a very ancient spirit and is obviously more placid and harmonious than the Greek god of war Ares. Though it has to be said that Harmonia could be very dangerous when she became jealous, but it's this line of descent that the Amazons became so fabulously beautiful and perhaps slightly more sympathetic, because they come from Harmonia, the nymph, and Ares, the Greek god of courage and war. Now, you'll be pleased to learn that some archaeological discoveries have been made of burial sites with female warriors on the great grassland plains that connect the nations of Europe with the vast regions of Asia. These areas are called the Great Steppes. And this was home to many ancient nomadic empires, and one such nomadic empire was the Scythian Empire, or Scythian Empire. Scythe, or Scythe, means to propel or to shoot. A tribe which was named by the Greeks, possibly due to their use of composite bows that they used to shoot from horseback. These Scythians were not only notoriously aggressive warriors, and they had huge armies, but they were more famous because they had armies that were composed of a large number of women. The Scythians were the predominant force on the Great Steppes until Darius of Persia declared war on them in around 500 BC. And he was defeated, and after that there was a golden age, but the Scythians declined in power by the rise of Alexander the Great. Archaeologists suggest that Scythian women probably inspired the Amazonian myth. In 2019, so quite recently, a grave with 3 generations of female Scythian warriors with golden headdresses was found near Voronezh in Russia. Here were multiple examples of Scythian warrior women. And such women wore long, loose robes ornamented with metal plaques of gold and were equipped with warrior belts made of leather with gold adornments upon which they could attach leather thongs for fastening a bow case, a sword, a sharpening stone and a whip. Don't forget these women are horse warriors. Intriguingly, one of the women found in Grozny had been buried with a large bronze mirror, 2 spears, and she wore a glass bead bracelet, which was not dissimilar to the indestructible bracelets of submission which is worn by Wonder Woman. And this was probably worn by the Scythian women, perhaps as a reminder that women should never submit to the charms of men. Now, the bracelet of the Amazonian woman has always been considered to be an entirely fanciful construct that had been invented by Charles Moulton, Moulton, who is famously the inventor of the lie detector, but even more famously is the creator of the Wonder Woman character. He conjectured that Greek women might have been bound by the wrists by their men, who kept them like they would keep a horse, or like they would keep a slave, kept bound, but once they realised their power, then they were able to break free, although once they broke free, like the Scythian women did, they retained the bracelets as a reminder of their subjugation by men. So did Amazons actually exist? Well, it seems that they did.